A bipartisan criminal justice reform bill called the First Step Act has advanced through the U.S. House and is now facing the Senate. Republican Senator Mike Lee of Utah told Bloomberg's Kevin Cirilli there are enough votes in the chamber to pass the bill.
We've got more than enough votes to pass this. And if you think about it, this is something of a miracle. In this day and age, when there is as much wrong with our country, as much discord as there is in Congress and throughout the American people as a whole, it's somewhat miraculous that we can get such a massive bipartisan supermajority behind one idea that has the support of the president, the ACLU, and conservative groups. An idea that would make America safe.
Has Leader McConnell assured that this will be voted on?
He hasn't assured it this week. A few weeks ago, before we recessed, prior to the election, he told us that if we could get enough support for it, if we could get into the mid to high 60s, that we would have a vote after the election. We're there. We're at or above that level.
You know, Senator Lee, I'm really struck by this in particular because it's really become a nonpartisan issue in many ways, but also an economic one. Why is this important in order to get folks into the workforce?
Well, most people who go to prison will eventually get out. When they get out, we want them to not commit more crime. We want to lower rates of recidivism. The best way to do that is to make sure they get jobs. Built into this bill is a set of incentives that would convince a lot of inmates to get training, job training, and receive recidivism or reduction treatment in order to make sure that when they do get out, they become productive members of society, productive members of the workforce, employees.
And specifically, what would this legislation do?
Well, it allows them, among other things, to earn good time credits and credits for recidivism reduction. The bill also contains a number of sentencing reforms. We have adopted in some cases, excessive minimum mandatory sentencing laws in this country. Our federal minimum mandatory sentencing laws sometimes result in really weird results.
Yeah.
Like one young man in Utah who was sentenced to 55 years in prison for selling 3 dime bags of marijuana to the same confidential informant over a 72-hour period. That's ridiculous. Not one person thinks that's reasonable. We deal with that and other related problems.
Switching gears, the president having some tough talk on trade out of the White House today and on Twitter. Top economic advisors, Larry Kudlow, for example, saying that they're open to having a deal with China, but not yet guaranteeing one. What would you like to see come out of the meeting between President Trump and President Xi at the G20?
I'd love to see an agreement. I would love to see free trade between our countries. We want to make sure that it's trade that can benefit people on both sides of the ocean. I generally think that entering into a trade war is a bad thing. Trade wars have no winners, they have only losers. So I hope and pray for their success.
Now, it looks like there's going to be more tariffs, though. Do you have any concerns, I guess, two-part question. First and foremost, about additional tariffs, like $260 billion additional worth of tariffs the president's threatening, as well as also as how the president has utilized Section 232 with the national security concerns.
Yeah, both of those worry me. First of all, tariffs in general, they're a tax on the poor and middle class. That's pure and simple. They're also a disincentive for American job creation. So for the use of the 232 tariffs that we have on steel and aluminum, for example, we have far more jobs in this country that depend on the manufacturing of things that use steel and aluminum as fungible inputs than we do employees who are involved in the manufacture of steel and aluminum themselves. Doesn't mean both aren't important, but 232 is supposed to be utilized in rare circumstances where it's essential to our military security. We need less than 5% of our domestic steel production for national security reasons. There is no reason, in my opinion, to invoke 232.
Final question. I know there's no plant in Utah, but this GM story really has gotten a lot of attention. The president's saying that he's very frustrated with the closing. It does impact commodities, however, that are in your state. What's your response, and what would you like to see the president do on the issue of GM?
Well, sure. Look, anytime you have excessive government intervention, whether it's excessive regulation, excessive taxation, or these specific types of taxes on imports, you're going to interfere with the supply chain, you're going to interfere with the workforce. These are the natural consequences of what happens when we overregulate or we enter into a trade war. That's why we should try to avoid them.